The battle that followed was chaotic, merciless, and swift. The fields around the villages of Tannenberg, Hohenstein, and Allenstein became a cauldron of fire and confusion. German artillery pounded Russian columns as they struggled through forests and marshes. Communications collapsed. Officers gave orders that never reached their regiments. Entire divisions wandered in circles, unaware they were marching into annihilation. By August 28th, the encirclement was complete. Samsonov's army, nearly 150,000 men, was trapped. The Germans closed in from all sides, cutting off retreat and supply. What followed was less a battle than a slaughter. Russian soldiers, exhausted and starving, threw down their rifles and surrendered in droves. Columns of prisoners stretched for miles. Others tried to fight their way out through the forests, only to be mowed down by German machine guns hidden in the trees. Samsonov himself, unable to face the shame of defeat, rode into the woods near Willenburg and took his own life. His body would later be found by peasants, slumped beside his horse, his revolver still in hand. When the smoke cleared, the scale of the German victory was staggering. 90 to 1,000 Russian soldiers were captured. Over 30,000 were killed or wounded. Entire corps ceased to exist. German casualties were fewer than 20,000. In Berlin, church bells rang. Newspapers hailed Hindenburg and Ludendorff as heroes. The Kaiser himself called the victory a miracle of Tannenberg, invoking the medieval battle of 1410, when German knights had once been crushed by Slavic forces on the same soil. Now, history seemed avenged. For the German people, it was a moment of triumph amid the uncertainty of a new, vast war. For Russia, it was a humiliation that would haunt the empire for years to come. Tannenberg was more than a battle, it was a turning point in strategy and morale. For Germany, it secured the eastern frontier, allowing the bulk of forces to remain concentrated in the west. For Russia, it was a catastrophe of confidence. The loss crippled the Second Army, strained the Tsar's command, and sowed seeds of doubt in an empire already fracturing under the weight of war. In the months that followed, Hindenburg and Ludendorff became legends. Their fame would elevate them to command the entire Eastern Front and eventually the German war effort itself. But the victory at Tannenberg also carried an invisible cost. It deepened Germany's belief in decisive battle, in the myth of total control through planning and willpower. A myth that, years later, would echo in darker times. For the Russian soldiers who survived, the retreat was a nightmare. Across the East Prussian frontier, columns of shattered men staggered back into Poland. Hunger, exhaustion, and despair followed them. Thousands perished from exposure. Others were taken prisoner in the days that followed. In Petrograd, news of the defeat spread like wildfire. Censorship could not hide the truth. The Tsarist regime sought scapegoats. Samsonov was dead. Rennenkampf was disgraced. The Russian people began to question the competence of their leaders and the justice of the war itself. Tannenberg became a wound one that never fully healed. The fields of East Prussia fell silent once more. The fires burned low. In the ruins of the villages, survivors buried their dead. The air was thick with the smell of smoke and damp earth. For a moment, it seemed as though the German Empire had turned the tide of fate. Yet the war was only beginning. On the Western Front, the Schlieffen Plan was faltering. In the trenches of France and Belgium, the guns were already settling in for a long, grinding stalemate. Tannenberg was a lightning flash, brilliant, terrible, and brief. It demonstrated the power of coordination, intelligence, and rapid movement in modern warfare. But it also revealed the fragility of armies built on arrogance and weak communication. In the grand sweep of the Great War, Tannenberg stands as both triumph and warning, a reminder that even the most dazzling victories can cast long shadows. Decades later, when the world once again descended into chaos, the names of Hindenburg and Ludendorff would return, this time not as soldiers of strategy, but as architects of a nationalist myth. The victory that once symbolized discipline and genius became a cornerstone of pride for a wounded nation, reshaped by politics and propaganda. But history remembers the truth beneath the myth, that Tannenberg was won as much by Russian error as by German brilliance, by human fallibility as by design. Today, the forests and fields of northern Poland bear few scars of that terrible week in 1914. The lakes are calm, the villages rebuilt. Yet beneath the soil lies the memory of an empire as full and another as fleeting triumph. Tannenberg endures not just as a battle, but as a lesson in the peril of overconfidence, the cost of miscommunication, and the thin, fragile line between victory and ruin. 1914. The world believed the war would be over by Christmas, but Tannenberg was only the beginning. The machine of total war had awakened, and no nation, no commander, would escape its grasp. From the forests of East Prussia to the trenches of the Somme, the Great War would devour a generation and reshape the century to come. Fade to black.